But the whole team up, say that's north side. I'm all lonely if I shoot the tech. And I'm 10 seasons in, still I'm coincide. Every day I'm going back to back to back to back to back, so ain't no neck to neck. Bitch pressing in the valley, growing stronger, only open up to check the text. Really know it's superhuman, I'm in overtime, they hate, so they check the chest. I've been down in.
And when you pair that up, when you think about it, right? Forecast. And when we paired it with, guys, I don't know, the aspect of agility, right? These guys have perfect information going into the end game, right? That's a scary spot to be for everyone else, because if they know where they need to go and you don't, they're going to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and their game plan in game one was very, very clear, right? This was thought out. This was their strategy. They wanted to push forecast towers, and they knew they were going to have to get in those box fights. So game number one, they took the SMG. But in game number two and onward, they actually opted to not take SMGs directly off spawn. Instead, went for like water bending or the DMR, because I think they realized they needed to get those long-range tags to keep up with Storm Surge. And I was like, yeah, if they're taking those weapons, they're not going to keep box fighting. No, Kelly, they kept box fighting.
And I swear, every time we watched them in game after game number one, when they did have Storm Surge, within seconds they were able to get a snipe and then no longer be under Storm Surge. But I think a lot of duos, including Peterbot and Pollo, were a little worried after game one when Storm Surge activated at zone 2. But obviously that changed a little bit as the game went on. But obviously, with that being a part of the issue, with so many duos having issues with Storm Surge, I love to see what Peterbot and Pollo are doing to be able to overcome that.
And with that info, can you kind of talk me through maybe some of the strategy we saw from them yesterday that we could see happen again today?
Well, yeah, I would be no surprise if we saw them push for more forecast towers. Forecast is so good. And this game, we're going to take a look at just how good it is. Peterbot and Pollo, they love to play for height, but you need to poise yourself up early on in the end game to actually be able to play it. What better information to have than where the next zone is going to go? And look at how isolated they can be. No danger at all. There's no other team even close to them because they're able to make that early rotation. And David, why are they on the south side? Again, they have forecast. They know where the next zone's going.
And you could just see that happening all throughout the end game there. They were holding height from multiple points during several games where it just seemed like they were controlling the lobby. And we've seen this kind of a reoccurring thing where no one even looks to high ground. And although Peterbot and Pollo did take high ground almost every single game, they were only able to walk away with 2 victory royales. But who needs a victory royale when you're making top 8 every single game?
Absolutely disgusting scoreline. 486 points in first place. A lot of points ahead of everyone else. We'll talk about that more in just a second. First, I want to catch up with our casters, Monster D Face the Best, Taco, and hear their thoughts on the day.
That's right, and they're not the only team that is up there in the race right now. The closest next competitors are, of course, CANALE and Cooper, and we have to celebrate them as well, Taco.
Yeah, there's so much Peterbot and Pollo propaganda coming out of the analyst desk, but I want to give a friendly reminder. Today, we have that 1.5 times point multiplier, and CANALE and Cooper ended day one with 368 points underneath their belt, so they are definitely still well within that striking distance of that first place position on the leaderboards. But in all due respect to Peterbot and Pollo, they have definitely earned their flowers and being the talk of the town right now.
Yeah, and it's not just that. It's, of course, the consistency. We've seen this consistency carry through. It's only gotten better from qualifier to semi-set lobbies, and now, of course, the finals. And not to mention, yesterday, there were instances where a first-place team were left as individual solos. However, they did the impossible, the unthinkable, right, and clutched up in those moments. If those opportunities didn't go that way, we'd see a much different standing. So I do think today is ultimately going to come down to game 7 through 12 all the way through to the end. Zeke, for us personally, as if I had to really put a number on it, I mean, you know, it's not over until it's fully over there, if you had to ask me.
I couldn't agree more, MDF. That 1.5 times multiplier, we even saw it a little bit in EU, right? Suddenly, you've got duos jumping up these placements because these numbers are huge. Just the Victory Royale is worth 100 points. That just keep that in mind as we watch these games throughout the day. And thank you guys for, of course, calling out CANALE and Cooper. They're looking like the only duo that can keep up with what Peterbot and Pollo are doing. Now, as we kind of continue the talk, though, we have to remember 3 spots going to the Global Championship. So if we've got, of course, Peterbot and Pollo going in first place, we got Cooper and CANALE coming in second place, well, then we're looking at a fight for third. And as we bring up the standings, we can kind of see who's in third place right now and who could potentially look to strike at that third place spot. We kick things off with third place, Bryce and Bolts. They're uncontested and seem to be pretty placement heavy after yesterday.
Yeah, they have this incredibly huge uncontested split over in Dumpenhausen, and this split provides them so much loot and so much heavy metal that they essentially go into the end game without any concerns of having to kind of put themselves at risk. And most importantly for me is that they do a good job prioritizing objectives like the bunker and Rift Island. They grab Rift Island at least twice in day one. And although they don't grab the most amount of eliminations, they are incredibly good at grabbing these long range tags. And because of the distance, they can save their heals and mats for the end game. And although in the end game they do tend to stick to the front, middle, maybe low ground, they once again by doing that are able to save their heals. And Vivid, most importantly, they eliminated Peterbot.
Ooh, yeah, Bryson Bolt's looking good. Currently sitting in third place, right? So kind of have that edge over the other teams that are kind of competing for it. But it wouldn't be no surprise to me if we saw them continuously go for some of those objectives to make sure they place themselves next to teams so that way they can get some damage.
A new accolade in the Fortnite scene. How many FNCS titles, Global Championship titles, eliminated Peterbot? Got it. Thank you for that, Kelly. Let's talk about fourth place, Reet and Ritual. Also a duo uncontested. And guess what? They not only eliminated Peterbot, but Pollo as well, taking the victory royale from them.
That is right. And Ritual and Reet, you know, we talked about them a lot in Major 1. They were one of the favorites to win, and they're absolutely incredible fraggers. And they have their Reckless Railways POI just downloaded to a T. And once again, another top duo prioritizing forecast towers. Again, this is something that we saw from them in Major 1, and they're carrying that over into Major 2. And historically speaking, Reet is known to be one of the best fraggers in Fortnite, but this Major in particular, it's been Ritual that's been popping off.
Imagine having a duo that can kind of keep up with the W Key King. Awesome to see this duo working so well together. You know, honestly, last Major also there was like a crazy stat where they were like the team that was actually closing out fights the fastest. So good to see them in contention to actually make it to globals again, and you know, dominating the low ground in that one game where they got that victory royale and taking it to the higher ground. Awesome to see.
The duo 1 point behind them is none other than Baka and Pars. Once again, placement heavy duo. However, they're a little low on the elimination side, so I feel like if they can pick that up, we can look for that cementation of third place.
And they weren't contested, but there is some worry about them being contested. My focus on Baka and Pars, though, is how early they leave their POI, this ship it station split that they have. And barely 2 minutes into their drop, they're already rotating over to restored reels to grab some tags from those duos over there. Once they get the tags and even elimination, they rotate back to their POI, and then they're using this launch pad over and over again in a single game to be able to rotate early on. And when they're low on mats from all the fighting that they engaged in, Pars does some insane deep rotate in game 3 into Storm to get on a train, and they stay there for 4 to 5 minutes. And I love the utilization of kind of this unique strategy. And although they do have issues with Storm Surge, it definitely looks like they are kind of working on some strats to be able to recover from that.
Gosh, using the jump pads, the train, right? Everything that they can possibly find around the map. But the big thing for Baka and Pars switching up when it comes to Grands semifinals, they were actually the team that was on the higher ground the longest throughout all of the games, and we have not necessarily seen them on higher ground yet, just adapting their end game strategy to go ahead and play just a little bit lower. Still doing well though.
High ground, you say? Well, why not give an honorable mention here to the duo in 7th place? Actually, over from EU, it's Paco and Mixin, one of the few duos that have looked to actually fight for high ground and hold it.
Yeah, Paco and Mixin are an incredible duo, and obviously there's been this discourse of, oh, a tier 3, tier 2 EU team able to compete with the best of NA, but Paco and Mixin are absolutely incredible players. They've made it to grand finals in EU plenty of times, and I can see why they're able to do that in these games right here. Going again for this big split drop, and they actually stay split all the way to zone 2, both of them grabbing their own individual towers to grab Storm Surge. However, they do seem to have some issues with Storm Surge, but a way to overcome that is these dead side rotations to put them in a better position towards the end and late game so that they can grab some easy tags once the rest of the lobby joins in on them.
Yeah, and this team, listen, it was no question about it. They were definitely struggling throughout the qualifiers, throughout semifinals with Storm Surge. Like, there were games where they were just 200 below, and everybody was like, wow, come Grands, this is not going to look good. But putting themselves in top 10, they have clearly come up with a strategy to go ahead and actually adapt to the lobby and fix those mistakes. So it's good to see them go ahead and implement those.
Okay, here we got a minute before we get into all of the action. Guys, I wanted to kind of quickly get your thoughts on something. With the 1.5 times multiplier, what can duos do coming into these next 6 games to be proactive, right? What can we do to say there's spots to Global Championship? I gotta secure it.
Zeke, I've got the perfect answer to that. What can duos do? They can replicate what Andalex and Sato did over on EU. Day 1, they ended day 1 in 46th place. At the end of the competition, at the end of the 12 games, they were 5th. They qualified to Global Championships over an incredible day 2. I want to see some NA teams do the same.
And it's definitely possible. And we've already seen in day 1 plenty of teams change up their POI. So I expect we can see more of that today as well. But a lot of it, if you come down to it, comes down to just surviving and making it to the end game, being able to hold on to your heels. And I think Storm Surge is the big concern for everyone. When you get into this middle game where everyone's box-to-box fighting, that's when you lose all your mats, that's when you lose all your heals. So prioritizing kind of long-range engagements to get those Storm Surge tags, to be able to save up your heavy metal and to be able to save up your heals is definitely going to help them in the end game.
Guys, thank you so much for your insight. It is time. The competition kicks off right here, right now. Game 7 is upon us. So, casters, over to you.
Thank you, Zeke. That's right. We're ready for Game 7, of course, the second day here of the FNCS. We're picking up right where we left off yesterday, Taco, and that is with non-stop action and most likely a Peterbot and Boyo show if they can keep up the momentum.
Yeah, everybody, though, has had the same equal opportunity after the conclusion of Day 1 Grands MDF to do some VOD review, get a little bit of that late night study session, maybe a little bit of morning grind as well. But Game 7 on the horizon, and I'm really going to be more excited to see what happens in today's games.
Well, that's right. Nothing beats a grand finals like a Fortnite grand final. Honestly, after yesterday's 6 games, there is so much, I think so much adjusting that teams have to make here today if they want a shot.
And the primary reoccurring theme as well for so many of our teams is, do you find a DMR or a waterbending mythic? Because that is basically what is going to bring the entirety of the surge strategy for so many of these other teams that aren't dealing with these early contest situations. Blake and Macwood, keep in mind, these guys were the victors of Game 6 yesterday. They concluded Day 1 relatively strong. The big question is, can they maintain that momentum from yesterday through to today? Because they definitely had quite a few stumbles here at Grand Glacier. Thoric is not an easy duo to overcome in this kind of situation.
Yeah, and I talked with, Blake there a little bit privately on the side, and he commended the fact that, yes, he hasn't actually won an FNCS Grand Finals lobby win in a long time. And I think he then went on to tweet talking about, what was it, since like 2022 or so. So just a celebratory moment all around. And honestly, you really do have to appreciate the fact that Blake and Mac would have been competing for so long. And we'll see how they continue to trend upwards, just surging in confidence there. But let's get to Mount Olympus, man. What went wrong with Booga and Agers yesterday? I mean, Taco, break it down for us.
Booga and Agers had a whole whirlwind of emotions essentially coming out of this POI. I mean, they finished yesterday in 28th position, so they definitely have a lot to make up for if they want to find themselves within that top 3 threshold in today's leaderboard. But it definitely kicks off with the fact that Zeus and Pikes, they really just backed off initially from that early contest at Mount Olympus, and that posed so many problems for Booga and Agers' late game surge strategies that their mid-game rotations just became so scuffed, because if you don't have any surge, if you want to opt for those dead side rotations that we're familiar with seeing Booga especially tend to opt for, you can't really do that if you don't have any surge.
That's right, and Pikes and Zeus is definitely a hit or miss team when it comes down to whether or not they want to be aggressive. But first, let's jump in with Cold and Acorn here. It does look like the fencing fields remains to be highly contested. No adjustments being made here, other than the fact I'd say Cold and Acorn haven't quite gotten their hands dirty. Yesterday, they were fighting almost immediately on the drop. We've seen them go up against the likes of Muzz and Paper early and even others, but before that fight concludes. It does look like Clix and Epic Whale has a lot riding on the lines here. They went from Lavish Lair being uncontested to immediately keying south here for a team nearby. So I think we're looking at some light adjustments to their strategy maybe.
Yeah, Clix and Epic also recognizing the fact that with the team close by at the estate station just southeast of Lavish Lair, that'd probably be one of their easiest ways to try and acquire some early surge. It's going to be Dragon and Poppy Blast. Keep in mind, yesterday we also saw the likes of Victor and B-Dog trying to drop at that estate station, but as far as Clix and Epic are concerned, if they can't get the surge done here, then they're going to have to depend on the weapon bunker fight, and those haven't necessarily been as favorable in Clix and Epic's direction, primarily because of the fact that they used a lot of their resources. So many of their mats especially were getting burned during those weapon bunker siege moments, and they weren't necessarily closing off the engagements. You gotta finish those fights if you commit to them, and that little bit of back and forth just left Clix and Epic in shambles for materials.
Yeah, that is right. We saw a lot of that, but hold up. We have a quick highlight here from Paco and Mixon. Paco and Mixon, man, picking up the momentum where they left off there. That top 10 finish surely coming in, keeping a hot pedal to the metal here. Very well played for them. They're going to pick up their first elimination, and we already know that whatever they've done from semifinals to grand finals, it is definitely paying off right now, as they've really put a fix, if you will, on the leak that was their Storm Surge strategy. I would say that was the one issue in their overall game plan, and all we've seen from grand finals is nothing but improvements for this team, Paco and Mixon here. So all around, I mean, that's the type of performance we expect of our grand finalists, especially if you want to start fighting your way up to top 3. If there's a day where you want to play well, we've seen that it has to be today when there's a point multiplier on the line.
Over in EU early today, we saw the impact that the point multiplier can have for some teams. But right now the focus being Miro and Dukes. Miro side tag from the east. Never even had a chance to see it coming. Dios trying to close in onto Miro's current position, but Dukes is going to immediately reconvene with Miro, making sure that this engagement does not go fully south. Decay and Sigma maybe sniffing out an opportunity there, but they don't want to get caught in the middle either, recognizing the fact that there's a third party nearby. Peterbot and Pollo, on the other hand, these guys love engagements anytime they can make them happen. Saucy on the run currently, but Peterbot, he's got the same amount of dashes at his disposal, but he's also got that mythic gatekeeper. The shield's already broken. Saucy still doing his best to try and escape. He's made it towards his duo Frostmon, but boxed up in the middle of the River of Styx. This is not a safe position, but it's also causing Peterbot to question just how badly do I really need these eliminations? Sure enough, another team spotted out on the hill. Peterbot not wanting to get caught out in the open. So he'll think better of that recent engagement and just fall back for the time being.
Yeah, Pollo still hasn't put any shield on either, so I'm not sure what the holdup here is. But Peterbot very much exposed to multiple teams now, open up to different lines of fire here. Pressure rising right now. Zbaka's on the move now, and this is what I like most about Peterbot, how active he's willing to be to contest different duos here in the vicinity. But the DMR, the perfect weapon to find those tags. Big damage, big swings. Where's Pollo? What is Pollo doing? I don't hear his rifle going off. He's like, just moving around down there.
Probably just actually taking the opportunity to get some shield recovery going, because Baka and Pars, I think they were the ones that were kind of threatening Pollo's shields more than anything, his HP bar in general, approaching from behind Peterbot and Pollo's position. But Pars and Baka, they also elected to back off, given that they spotted out Yasir and Krizix rotating all the way from Fencing Fields towards this area in between Pleasant Piazza, Grim Gate. And it's also interesting to see Yasir and Krizix at this position, because when you think about yesterday, they were frequently fighting that early 50-50 up against Acorn and Cold. So the fact that they seem to have maybe forfeited the right to that vault over at Fencing Fields, because that's the primary reason why they tend to take that engagement with Acorn and Cold in the first place. And you see it also after the conclusion of day one, definitely feeling himself a bit. He was kind of popping off on socials, man. He got the response that he wanted out of Cold, a little bit of provoking, as I like to call it, but I think it's all good and fun whenever it comes to a Grand's competition.
It's all part of the game. The mental side, what you do, you know, in game, off air, right? Everything does matter. I mean, shoot, there were even small rumors that Blake was gonna go challenge Peterbot. He was like, I didn't say that. Like, what are you talking about? So you never really know who's up to what. We jumping in right now. A little bit of some in the storm action going on here. Sphinx has to hit those. This is not a comfortable position to be in if you're only 42 above. There goes the update. He's going to start slipping down now. When you're inside the top 6, I mean, pressure is, you know, surely on to continue to make ends meet.
I like how he got the most difficult shot there. The few freebies beforehand, before he alerted that other team in their surge base exactly what he was up to. But again, when teams go for those return peaks, that thermal scope on the DMR definitely pays.
Down.
Oh, that's big for Peterbot though. Managing to turn it around just a bit, gets the elimination onto Xavi. Pollo not fully eliminated just yet. Peterbot throwing his body back, trying to see if he can do some kind of recovery, some form of a revive here. Gets Pollo onto the stairs here inside one of the buildings at Grim Gate. Z-Link hot on his heels, but doesn't seem to have spotted out exactly where Peterbot is just yet.
Very smart for him to distance himself. However, unfortunate, this team is just tracking him down right now. And this could be the setback that everyone on the standings needs. And Neko is just getting ever so close. Now remember, most of these players can pinpoint exactly where the pickup is happening. And Neko seeming to be on the hunt here, but too late. They gave him a chance. If Pollo gets picked up here, they will be able to bounce back. But look at how much it's going to cost them. All of their Chug Splashes, minis cut down, and honestly just left with Flowberry Fizz. And you can see even Pollo taking the big pot there as well. So this is going to be very interesting to see if it's even possible for them to climb back now, as they have no material and the zone's already essentially telling them, you got to go.
Yeah, the damage has definitely been done already, though, to Neko. Peterbot fully eliminating Xavi has kind of forced Neko to essentially have to play a stealth position now. He can't really afford to make himself known. Maybe he had an opportunity to pick up Xavi's reboot card, but with Skittles and Trashy now encroaching this Grim Gate position, it's going to be real tough for Peterbot and Pollo with hardly any builds to make it out from that area. Disaster could potentially strike here as well for Scissor and Chimp if they can't connect any shots onto Thoric or School. Thoric and School maybe even recognizing the fact, hey, these guys playing kind of desperate, trying to siege our walls. They're likely low on Surge, and with no shield, shield crack. Gonna break through now here for Scissor and Chimp. Whether or not School and Thoric heard it is a different story entirely, but still need one more shot or else they are done for. Scissor gonna be the first to fall. No chance for Chimp to get a recovery tour here.
Yeah, Skull and Thoric pick up that soundbite as well. And they take full advantage there, finding their first elimination. The surge warning's gonna turn off there, and that's about as early as you can receive it with 90 players still alive in the game. I feel like very rarely do we get that one right there. So this is just showing you how much is on the line here for game number 7 now. So we're kicking things off, and you know, it couldn't be more interesting now as we see Vortek and Crisp trying to decide of whether or not the team...
Born in Cold, Larson, and all of our OG, to name a couple.
Take a look at Visual and Braids right now. Oh, box fight here against Vert and company, but shots come in from a third party in the distance there. That's someone rotating far north on the dead side. Visuals and Braids have a big decision to make here. Do you stick this one out or back off? But just the solo here, I mean, I would have to assume they'd want to be quick here and end this battle.
This has been a tough finals, though, for Vert and Yuumi. Especially after day 1. It is tough to keep the mental fortitude going strong, but Visuals Braids gonna cut a slight break here to Vert. If he keeps applying some damage, though, onto their shields, Vert could find himself in a 2 versus 1. It all depends on how badly Visuals and Braids really want to try and tax him for the way that he's aggressed into their shields. But Peterbot, Grimgate, we knew the situation was looking a little bit tough here, but he's back to finish the job, pick up right where he left off. Frostmon will be the first to get knocked and full eliminated.
They need those points. They need, or sorry, not the points. They need the loadout. They need the material. It's the comeback for them that they absolutely have to make up that early game fight, setting back Pollo. Walkers and Thatch, though, looking pretty comfortable here amidst Fuga and Adrian's base. Shots starting to come in. Pressure's on for Walkers. It's from Threats and Sphinx here, the Reckless Whaleways. Oh, they're targeting both teams. You gotta be careful, you know. Every now and again, you do this, and both sides start to fight back, but instead, Walkers goes up for high ground. What a decision. I was trying to set up the fact that they might just fire and target the duo in the distance, but no, they try to jump Fuga and Azers up top.
Hey, these shots are for everybody that they're able to spot out. And for good reason, because the longer that some of these fights take, the more likely you are to have another team interfere with your possible surge strategy or just looking for an elimination refresh in general. Threats and Sphinx, you can just tell that they want to be more aggressive up against the likes of Walkers and Thatch, but their experience, they also know better. You can't just recklessly key into somebody else's box when there are already so many eyes on your current engagement.
That update from Kanata and Cooper right now, jumping in on TK, and the damage comes in. It's a big, big tag onto Kanata. Pushed down to just 30 HP here, and the pressure comes in, and Bacon takes the wall, bodies TK, and it's up to Cooper now to try to clutch this one out. He does get the trade here, and he should be able to save his teammate, but has to, of course, make the edit. There it is. Bacon looking for a new angle from underneath. Cooper just holding things down right now defensively, but with the storm on the way with no white HP, I mean, at this point, Cooper might as well make the double edit here. And there it is. The zone does the rest. He must have had a good idea that that was coming.
I think it's just a bit obvious with how aggressive Bacon was being, but yeah, the damage. You also have a team behind. Kanata not actually able to escape after all that effort. Cooper, sadly, has to leave his teammate Kanata behind. Zero at the end of it was able to just get the one tag he needed into Kanata's HP bar. Just didn't have a whole lot to work with. Cooper, the moment that he tries to utilize the Wings of Icarus though for a rotation, spotted immediately. It's Paper, it's Muzz. They know just how incredibly low he is. They know that they forced him to the ground. And Cooper is just trying to do what he can to escape, but I don't even know if he's going to be able to make it into zone. This is looking like a beat situation right now, MDF.
He's on the move right now. The zone just started doing a little more damage. He makes it in with 1 HP, but the shots are already coming in. A single tag is likely all it's going to take here with 21 HP. And a team keys in, and even though he lands a monstrous shot onto the WTJ duo, it is not going to be enough. Kanata and Cooper go down. NA's only hope here in Game 7 to close the gap is now fully eliminated. And they're gonna be thinking long and hard about that one because they were extremely consistent, right? We were celebrating their consistency throughout the week, so what a setback.
It's also wild to think how consistent they actually were throughout the course of yesterday, because a lot of their mid games, in all honesty, they did not have ideal material counts, not even ideal loadouts most of the time, but they were just so insane with their box fights, with the way that they would just out-edit whoever they were engaging with, that they just made it work for the refresh. But it's day 2. That same strategy might not work as well. Depends on how the rest of the lobby continues to adapt. Baka does what he can, but to no avail. Baka and Par is just too far gone inside of the storm. Just too late on the rotate. There's no mobility, the low mobility, I should say. Competitive meta just posing so many problems for so many different teams.
It would be too early to start to say that it's not looking good for our top 5, but 2 teams in the top 5 have already dropped, giving more and more runway for teams like Blake and Macwood, Paco and Mixon to go ahead and get up into the conversation for a top 5/top 3 podium finish. But Paco and Mixon have a lot to worry about right now. Storm is doing so much damage. They're fighting on their way. Mixon's likely gonna fall here. He does, but not before Paco Mixon with 1 HP, and he actually has to abandon his teammate because he doesn't have any mats.
At the same time, we knew Bryson Bolts, Booga, Agers directly behind Paco and Mixon, so it's really only a matter of time before they got fully eliminated like they just did. Reet and Rich, in all honesty, they did not have ideal material counts, not even ideal loadouts most of the time, but they were just so insane with their box fights, with the way that they would just out-edit whoever they were engaging with, that they just made it work for the refresh. But it's day 2. That same strategy might not work as well. Depends on how the rest of the lobby continues to adapt. Baka does what he can, but to no avail. Baka and Par is just too far gone inside of the storm. Just too late on the rotate. There's no mobility, the low mobility, I should say. Competitive meta just posing so many problems for so many different teams.
Would be too early to start to say that it's not looking good for our top 5, but 2 teams in the top 5 have already dropped, giving more and more runway for teams like Blake and Macwood, Paco and Mixon to go ahead and get up into the conversation for a top 5/top 3 podium finish. But Paco and Mixon have a lot to worry about right now. Storm is doing so much damage. They're fighting on their way. Mixon's likely gonna fall here. He does, but not before Paco Mixon with 1 HP, and he actually has to abandon his teammate because he doesn't have any mats.
At the same time, we knew Bryson Bolts, Booga, Agers directly behind Paco and Mixon, so it's really only a matter of time before they got fully eliminated like they just did. Reet and Ritual doing a decent job so far, though. Practically dead center of the current zone. They seem to have a pretty good inkling of where they want to go next, but they know top of the mountain territory has definitely been claimed. Dukes and Miro could cause some real issues here on the fluidity of their next rotate, but Reet and Ritual, they seem content. They got a little bit of damage applied, and they're going to take a moment to pause. They want to look back, try and suppress some of the other teams that are trying to scale this mountain face.
Like the thought process here on the move. Flowberry Fizz gonna make this a pretty simple rotate. Okay, I'm actually more curious as to why they're gonna settle for this mid-ground position. Not looking to overcommit here, it seems like. They're just gonna leave it up to the zone, but you see what happens when you play this close. Other teams just have an easy opportunity on you. Now all of a sudden they have Poppy Blast and Dragon here to the left. Other teams above them, so pretty dangerous spot. Meanwhile, on the other side, Agers and Booga making up for lost time. We saw them find that Mixon elimination, and they didn't stop there. They followed up from Storm straight through the box of Bryson Bolt here, catching the knock there. And on high ground, Blake and Macwood. It's like, you know, finding a new fresh breath of air up top. Tyler and Curve, man. Top 5 after 3 games, and then the back half questionable all around. This is the best performance we've seen since that game 3.
They're definitely trying to make up for some lost ground after the results of the day 1 leaderboards. And Curve and Tyler, I think it's neat to see. It's just more about whether or not they can maintain that same sort of aggressive intent, or if anything, just playing for placements, because it seems like that's primarily their strategy, is to try and go for the placements. But they did definitely suffer some surge difficulties throughout the secondary half of day 1. Game 7, though, definitely not the case so far. Yamzu and Rise, another one of our teams where all throughout the course of yesterday, we saw them more often than not having to perform as a solo, one way or the other. Booga and Agers just lighting up their current box. Could be part of the reason why we saw that pause from Reet and Ritual, though, because they didn't want to fully commit over the top of the mountain just in case it pulls back more towards the bottom side. It's a tough break, though, for a lot of these teams.
Yeah, but not if you're Macwood and Blake. Yeah, ultimate height. They just land on top of all these old builds, and they're setting themselves up for what could be a day 1 into day 2 back-to-back, if we could call it that. I definitely would. But first, we of course have to get there. Reet and Ritual sizing up the high ground here, trying to feel out the competition. They're halfway through the mats, though. That'd be likely unfavorable for them. Meanwhile, the wide shot tells us everything we need to know. Blake and Macwood are way up above, and the zone's gonna bounce back in their favor, so the commitment to stay up top is definitely a good one. Look at how much material they have. Oh my gosh. You know they're happy that they were early contested basically for that surge to even give them this type of opportunity. Meanwhile, Peanut and Pollo have bounced back into the tournament. They're really flexing and putting on the numbers right here. They have 3 eliminations this game already. They're inside the top 20, and this is where they begin to break away with the lead right now. Remember, there's a multiplier being attached to your performances, so when you're in first place already, and your your nearest competition is out, I mean, this is how you just walk away with the championship belt, right? Like, this is how you do it.
For sure, and especially seeing Acorn and Cold have those 5 eliminations combined. It's a good amount of points. When you factor in that 1.5 times point multiplier, 6 per elimination. So they're also another team that's fully understanding their current position. Agers, great pickup onto Dragon. Could not have come at a better time, but just too little, too late for Bugha. Agers gonna have to try and close this one out on his own. The zone damage is just too much to deal with. He knows that he can't really afford to take that many more ticks of the storm, and he's gonna try to find a way out, but as soon as he goes up into the sky with those wings of Icarus, he's bound to draw some attention. Blake and Macwood chop momentarily. Blake, though, immediately reconnects, pulls right back up, knows that he still has control of the high ground, but he scouted them out. Peterbot, Pollo, they are on the hunt. They've got that aspect of agility. You can tell that they definitely want to find their perfect opportunity to strike, but first it's all down to Reet and Ritual and just survive.
Yeah, Reet and Ritual doing a great job of tarping there, but unfortunately one wall is all it took. Meanwhile, for high ground, the fight goes on, and Peterbot, just the timing onto Macwood jumping down, who was just trying to, do his job and get this base solidified. All of a sudden now, it's Peterbot and Pollo on high ground, and Blake is left picking up the pieces there somewhere in the mix, and honestly, he might have even been finished there. It does seem like this is going to be a huge GG for the NA market, but Agers still cooking down the low ground. This is a big game for Bugha and Agers to at least put them on the standings here where we expect them to be. Meanwhile, Cold and Acorn split up from one another. 8 eliminations, and Cold sacrificed so much HP to the Storm there. This is a rough spot to be in nonetheless. Yeah, look, he knows. He's like, hey, man, but we don't have anything. Take what little bit of material I have.
That's a tough break, though, for Miro and Dukes. Cold and Acorn, 10 eliminations now, 60 points just off eliminations alone. Ridiculous stuff coming out of those two, but we're back to the Peterbot Pollo show is what it's looking like. They've decided to descend. Visuals and Braids doing what they can to try and buy themselves a little bit more time, but Peterbot Pollo, their positioning was just too prime, dropping from height and scooping up the win here in Game 7.
And a game that they shouldn't have even had, such a comeback story for them right there, right? Pollo was down so early in the round. They didn't have much material or heals, and somehow they clawed their way out of that unfavorable position to go ahead and win Game 7, the first here to kick off our secondary day, and the highlight has to be that shot onto Macwood. Macwood just didn't see it coming, and from there on out, the rest is history. They just had everything they need, and even with no material, Flowberry Fizz to jump down and finish the deed is exactly what you expect of it. Pollo was healthy, Peterbot was healthy there in the end, and